What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today, another Scouting Steelers episode, going over all these top 30 visits for the Pittsburgh Steelers, bringing in all these pre-draft prospects, all that good stuff. Today, we're actually going to talk about one of my favorite prospects, one of my favorite guys that I've evaluated the entire cycle, Florida wide receiver Ricky Pearsall. If you guys follow me on Twitter, you guys have known for a long time, really since December, January, that I've been quite high on Pearsall. I feel like the media consensus opinion on him has risen over the past couple months after he kind of blew up the combine, had a good Senior Bowl. But really interesting player, interesting evaluation. I'm going to give my full scouting report on him. We're going to go over strengths, weaknesses, his numbers, all that good stuff, my projection for him, where I have him graded, and like kind of where he falls in my wide receiver rankings. Of course, I've put out my entire wide receiver rankings on SteelersNow.com. You guys can go check those out. I will put the link in the description. Just before we get started, please make sure that y'all like the video, subscribe, drop me a comment, all that good stuff. Is a quick, free, easy way to support the channel, and it allows me to bring you guys even more content. So let's talk about Ricky Pearsall, man. Like I said, one of my favorite guys I've evaluated the entire cycle. So I think that you guys will like this video. Fifth-year senior from Florida. He started his career at Arizona State, actually played with Brandon Ayuk. The Steelers saw him at the Senior Bowl. They had an informal meeting at the Combine. He is now a top 30 visitor to the facility. So kind of the whole thing with this kind of segment that I've been doing, bringing you guys all these scouting reports, has been on players that are visiting the facility because they ended up drafting for those guys last year, and then they signed Darius Rush. So these are a good indicator of like the type of interest that they have in these type of players. He did not work out at his pro day because, he lit the world on fire at the Combine. So didn't feel the need to do much in that regard. But Ricky Pearsall, 6'1", 189 pounds. Really, if you look at the testing numbers, man, like he exceeded. I thought he was a good athlete. Didn't really have any athletic concerns or anything like that. But this dude is not a quote unquote sneaky athletic. This dude tested like a freak of all freaks. 42 inches on the vertical. He jumped 10.9 in the broad. He ran a 4.41 40-yard dash, but an even more impressive 1.49 10-yard split. Anytime you're under that 1.5 mark, that's exceptional testing numbers. He had a 4.05 shuttle time and a 6.64 3-cone. Those were the areas where I really expected him to kind of excel at the Combine. I thought that he would do good in the explosive stuff. I thought that he would kill the agility drills. I did not see the 4.41 testing time, even though I definitely didn't see him. Like I think the betting market was having him over 4.5, and I definitely didn't see that. But 4.41 was a good time for him, and it has definitely helped his stock throughout the process. Last season at Florida, 65 catches, 963 receiving yards, 4 touchdowns. 57% of his snaps came in the slot. So this guy who's worked quite a bit on the inside. He's only had 3 drops over the past 2 seasons. He's got a career 3.6 drop rate, which is absolutely outstanding. Anytime you're looking at receivers with good hands, I mean, typically you want to see them under 6-7%. Definitely don't want to get into the double digit mark, but anytime you're in that 2 to 3% range, which is where he's been the last 2 years at Florida, really impressive. And it shows up on the film. We'll talk a lot about his strengths, but really the reason why I like him so much, man, he's an extremely refined prospect. I mean, this is a route runner extraordinaire. He's a deceptive route runner. He understands how to create separation. If you guys have followed me on Twitter, if y'all followed my stuff on YouTube, listen to me talk, whatever, you guys know how much I value guys that can create separation, right? Separation is king at the NFL level, and this dude knows how to get open. Last season, he had 11 catches and 246 yards on crossers. So kind of a familiar theme with guys like other guys that they brought in, like Xavier Legette, guys that can get open on these deep crossing routes. That was really where I saw him shine. He gave Ennis Rakestraw Jr., cornerback from Missouri, has a day 2 grade for me. He gave him fits over the last 2 seasons on these crosser routes. Had some big plays. The thing I like about him, he'll routinely get corners to open up their hips early, stress them vertically, and then turn them around, get open like that. He understands how to vary his tempo through his routes, so he knows how to gear down, gear up. Can he manipulate defenders with stints and stair steps at the top of his route, man? Like, he just understands how to create separation. You'll see him use head fakes primarily on like double moves and things like that. They ran him on a lot of double moves, and he was able to get open using head and shoulder fakes to kind of create some deception there. Really snappy at the break point. does a good job. He breaks on the balls of his toes or balls of his feet, excuse me. And he can really sink his hips. He's 6'1", but this dude can sink his hips. He's fluid. He can change direction. He's really smooth in and out of his breaks. One thing I like about him is, he takes very minimal break steps into his break, and then out of his breaks, I think he's really explosive. He maintains speed, so I like that a lot. Some of the reasons that I like him, man, I've described him as really quarterback friendly, and that can kind of be a cliche thing in the scouting kind of world. But this dude really, he kind of, just fits that bill to a T, in my opinion. He's got good spatial awareness. He shows up well versus zone. He understands like where to sit down in between zone defenders. When you're working in the slot, a lot of times you're having to read the leverage of multiple defenders, and I felt like he did that really well on tape. He does a good job not running himself into trouble. And then one thing that I noticed routinely whenever he was running routes, he would routinely come back to the football, and I really like that. He would cut off defenders, come back on the right angle to make sure that defenders weren't able to close that gap and get in there, to break up the pass or anything like that. His hands are outstanding. I think that's the big thing. Obviously, the 3.6 drop rate, kind of speaks for itself in that regard. But his catching technique is excellent. Diamond technique. He understands, when to flip his hands. He's got plus body control. He tracks the football extremely well, and he's an easy adjuster to inaccurate throws, which is something I really value, particularly with a guy like this who you're anticipating playing in the slot, and having to go over the middle of the field and things like that. This dude catches away from his frame. He can adjust to poorly thrown footballs. The one throw that I keep coming back to, the one-handed catch that he made, I feel like everybody's seen that one on social media. Just an outstanding play. But the catch that I think really stands out to me was against Georgia last year. He was running kind of this deep over route, and he had a defender in trail technique, and the ball is thrown, multiple yards behind him, and he's running full speed. He's able to adjust and kind of contort his body and catch the ball behind him for a huge play in that game. And then it just shows up all over his film, man. Like, you throw the ball to him, he's such a reliable target. He's a really high effort player in the run blocking game. He was asked to do quite a bit in college. So like, they really did ask him to, pin edge defenders. They would ask him to dig out safeties, things like that. And I think that he just comes off as really competitive and really selfless on film. Like, he really cares about, trying to help his teammates, trying to do whatever it takes to win. And, effort is a big part of the receiver blocking game, right? Like, I think that that's something you absolutely have to have in today's NFL, especially if you're going to play in the slot. You got to at least be able to show effort in the run game. And, he's definitely one of the most consistent high effort guys in that regard. For sure. So some of the weaknesses or concerns I have, like I said earlier, I think he has good play speed, and I definitely didn't think that he was slow, but I don't think that he plays like the freak athlete he tested at. That 4.41 40 time, I don't know that consistently showed up. He did run away from defenders, particularly guys that weren't as fleet of foot in the SEC. He did run away from guys like that on crossers and, deeper routes. But most of the times I saw him getting open, it was more about, what he was doing within his route, his salesmanship more than just his pure athletic ability, which all in all, I mean, that's still a good thing to have. I just didn't see him quite, he's not a guy that's going to line up on the boundary and then get pressed at the next level and consistently stack defenders vertically. I just don't see that type of athlete on film. But we'll see. I just think faster corners are going to be able to stick with him stride for stride at the next level on the outside. Most of his concerning issues really boil down to play strength. That was really the one thing that I kept coming back to in his scouting report that kind of gave me a little bit of pause, because everything else, like, he's so well rounded, but he does have a wiry frame. He's a thin guy. He's sub 190, even though he's 6'1". He's just skinny. And I think that he's easily knocked off balance at the first and second level. Physical corners can kind of get into his frame and reroute him pretty easily. There were times where I felt like, when he would be rerouted at the second level, instead of kind of dropping his shoulder to try to avoid that contact, he was a little too laxed. And then, linebackers would be able to kind of give him a little bit of a nudge, and he would go flying, 2 to 3 yards, just because he's, like I said, he's skinny. So I think his effort in the run game, it's exceptional, like I said. And I think that effort is a big part of the wide receiver blocking game at the next level if you want to create explosive plays on the ground. But that lack of play strength does affect his ability to sustain blocks. He's just not that strong. And I think that that's going to have to be something you live with. This is not a guy who's going to be in my opinion, a plus blocker at the next level. I think he can be adequate because I think like I said, his effort is exceptional. He's going to do the things you ask him to do. Perhaps his technique can be cleaned up even more to make him better in that regard. But I do think that it's mostly effort, and he's not going to be a guy that's just going to completely wipe out safeties, especially at the next level where you're going to be going up against bigger, faster, stronger athletes. He's a good leaper, but I don't think he was overly impressive in contested catch situations. Like he will try to high point the football, but that wasn't like his contested catch rate is not all that great according to Pro Football Focus over the last 2 years. And when I was watching him, he didn't win most of those battles like down the field where he was having to kind of box guys out or anything like that. He's a 24-year-old rookie. I've kind of explained my process with this kind of stuff, but if you're a 21-year-old rookie, you get a little bit of a bump up. If you're 24, you get a little bit of a bump down. And that's just about, trajectory, like where you are on your development path. I think Pearsall is an incredibly refined player. He's well developed. So I don't really have a problem with this. It's just something worth noting that, in terms of his projection and what he could be, because you're not just drafting guys what they are right now. You're drafting them to figure out, what you're going to get at and how that's going to translate to the next level, what they're going to be 2, 3, 4 years down the line. I think there's other players in this class with more upside potentially than Pearsall. But I think, like I said, he's a pro-ready instant contributor. He's athletic. He's cerebral. He understands the nuances of the position and how to get open, which will make him extremely valuable in any offense. Every offense can use a guy like Ricky Pearsall. His best fit is obviously inside of the slot, but I think he projects to have some inside-outside versatility where he can be used as a Z at the foot of the stack in motion. You can use him in those regards. I don't think that he's necessarily great against press coverage right now. Some of the play strength stuff, like when guys can't get up into his frame, does worry me. But I do think his footwork is quick enough, and I think that he's a quick enough athlete to where the release package that he shows right now in college, I think that it'll continue to evolve. He at least has a plan at the line of scrimmage, which I appreciate. And I just think he's going to be able to do enough on the outside to where you can flex him out when you need to. And that is a big part of the NFL game right now, right? Like all these NFL offenses, they want guys that can go inside, outside. That's because, a lot of the big time receivers right now are going into the slot. They want to try. The NFL is all about matchups. So however you want to create your matchups that week, it helps to have guys that have that alignment versatility. And I think Pearsall has enough of it for me to where I didn't dock him for just being a slot only type of player. Like I said, as an older prospect, I don't know how much more there is to tap into, but this is a relatively complete player already. So I don't really have too many concerns about that. He's a nice complementary piece in the passing game. I think he's going to be a really good pro, man. I gave him a mid to late second round grade. I gave him a little bit of a bump after the combine, especially because I was anticipating good testing and we ended up with freakish testing. Kind of caused me to go back to the film a little bit. But he did receive like a little bit of a bump. He was somebody that I wrote about for SteelersNow.com back in January about he was the perfect mid-round, receiver, because at that point in time he was being mocked in the late 80s and 90s. And when I went back and watched his film, I wasn't even watching him originally. I was actually watching a Georgia defender. It was Tyke Smith that I was doing evaluation on, a scouting report on, and he popped on film. I was like, man, I gotta go watch this dude. And I kept watching. I watched more and more. I said, man, this dude can really play. He's somebody. So then I looked at the big board. He wasn't really all that highly touted. Like I said, he was in the 90s at that point. I was like, man, this is a good player. I think he'd be a really good fit. I kind of preliminarily put him in that late second, early third round range, but I said if you could get him in the third round, that seems like a still great value. Now he's the 47th ranked player on the consensus board. His stock is absolutely blown through the roof. Like I said, that's what happens when you go test like a freak athlete. And the tape's really good, man. Like I said, I listed off a bunch of strengths. I think that every offense can use a guy like this. But I just think that with what you see on film, with how competitive he is, the type of route running that he brings, I definitely think that he's what the Steelers coaches talk about in terms of having the right attitude and the right mentality in the room. And I just think that he's going to be a really good player. I think he has like wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 type potential. And the Steelers obviously have a significant need at the receiver position right now. They do not have a wide receiver 2. I guess wide receiver 3 right now would technically probably be Van Jefferson, maybe Calvin Austin. But Pearsall's a guy that makes a lot of sense for them. Someone that they would probably have to take in the second round at this point at pick 51. Depending on what they do in the first round, they have some other needs, center, receiver being the top 2 needs, in my opinion. But corner, upgrading at tackle, I think is also really high on their priority list. So we'll see what happens. There's been some rumblings out there that the Steelers may be looking for a veteran receiver to kind of pair with George Pickens. But this is a good quality receiver group. Pearsall finished as the wide receiver 9 for me on my wide receiver rankings. I will link those again in the description. But wide receivers 7 through 9 were honestly extremely, extremely close. Like these guys were all within like very, very almost percentage points on my grading scale, and someone that I absolutely have no problem, taking at 51, considering the need. Like I said, he finished with a mid to late second round grade for me. One of the most fun prospects. I'm glad to see him getting a lot of shine, especially after the combine. I feel like a lot of teams, a lot of fans, I'm seeing on Twitter talk about Ricky Pearsall, and it's cool because I definitely think he's a good player. So I like Slick Rick, man. Let me know what you guys think about Ricky Pearsall. Let me know if y'all think he's a good fit for the Steelers. Drop me a comment. Let me know what y'all thought of the scouting report. Let me know some prospects if you guys want to see. I think I'm going to do Max Melton, cornerback from Rutgers. I dropped my cornerback rankings on SteelersNow.com. You guys can go read those as well. I ranked my top 15 cornerbacks in the class. I'm a little bit higher on Max Melton than the consensus is right now. I am very intrigued by his skill set, and I think that he's going to be a better pro potentially than he was in college. So I like the athleticism for him, but we'll be back over the weekend to talk about Max Melton. But if you guys have other prospects y'all want me to do scouting reports on, preferably guys with Steelers interest, just because, a lot of my following or subs on here are Steelers based. But I'm going to try to get to as many of these top 30 visits. I did Amarius Mims. I'm going to try to get to some more offensive linemen next week potentially as well. But if you guys want to see somebody in particular, drop me a comment and I will try to get to those as quickly as possible. As always, I appreciate you guys' support. I'm so excited for draft weekend, the best weekend of the year, in my opinion. We are less than 2 weeks away. I'm extremely excited, in case you can't tell. And I've got a lot of cool things planned for that weekend. I am super, super ready to get into it, to find out where all these prospects land. As always, appreciate you guys. I hope you all enjoy your weekend.